Hello and welcome to this edition of Niger Delta Dialogue. I am Stella Dogu. The Niger Delta Dialogue, NDD, set out in 2016 as a group of 50 leaders in the region to engage with the spate of attacks by militants on oil installations that was then crippling the Nigerian economy. Over time, however, the NDD has evolved as a safe space for sustained discussion of issues on the oil-rich region. To advance this cause, the European Union sponsored a research-based initiative to study the challenges of insecurity in each of the core Niger Delta states. On the program today, we shall be discussing the research report, including findings and recommendations on Rivers State. We have joining us virtually from Port Harcourt to discuss the Rivers State Report, a renowned human rights and environmental activist and an expert on Niger Delta, and Kyo Briggs. Let's now have an overview of Rivers State and what the research report found out about the state fondly described as the treasure base of the nation, and the recommendations on what must be done to arrest the growing rate of insecurity in the 23 local government areas of Rivers State. Stay tuned.
This is Port Harcourt, the capital of Rivers State, that was created on May 27, 1967, before Bayelsa State was carved out of it about 29 years later in 1996. For a long time, Rivers, which now has 23 local government areas and is home to 2 of the country's oil refineries, was the #1 oil-producing state in Nigeria. This explains why Rivers State came to be described as the treasure base of the nation. Its status of being the #1 oil-producing state in Nigeria, however, came to an end in July 2012. This was when the Supreme Court, in a landmark judgment, ceded 76 oil wells in Cross River State to Akwa Ibom, that has become the leading oil-producing state in the country. Until 1993, 30% of oil production was reportedly from only 4 of the 23 local government areas in Rivers State. This includes Kana, Gokana, Eleme, and Te, that make up Ogoniland. Oil production in Ogoniland has, however, been stopped since 1993, following agitations from the people about pollution of the environment. Today, some of the polluted communities in Ogoniland have seen a level of work on the $1 billion cleanup project necessitated by the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, report. Instructively, Rivers State has been at the heart of agitations in the Niger Delta region in the last 6 decades. This includes the 12th-day revolution led by Major Isaac Adaka Boro after declaration of the Niger Delta People's Republic on February 23, 1966. Then came the struggle of the Ogoni people that led to the adoption of the contentious Ogoni Bill of Rights on August 26, 1990. This followed the mobilization and advocacy led by playwright and environmental activist Ken Saro-Wiwa, which eventually saw the establishment of the Oil Minerals Producing Areas Development Commission in 1992, about 8 years after the Interventionist Agency for the Development of the Niger Delta region was scrapped in 1984. After the Saro-Wiwa episode came the militancy that has come to be identified with the Niger Delta region following the clamor for resource control that was formally launched on December 11, 1998, with the adoption of Kayama Declaration in neighboring Bayelsa State. The waterways and creeks in Rivers State became the natural launch pad for the militant groups, and the rest is history, as captured by Dr. Jackson, TCB, Jack of the Federal University, Otueke, in Bayelsa State, who is the lead researcher that carried out the Niger Delta Dialogue NDD study on security in the state.
Security issues in the Niger Delta, as we all know, it has metamorphosed from the issues of oil resource control to militancy, and we had the amnesty, and we are now in the post-amnesty Niger Delta. And from our study, generally, we gathered manifestation of diverse forms of insecurity, issues around sea piracy, militancy, cultism, inter- and intra-communal clashes, international oil companies and host communities, crises around environmental degradation, non-implementation of GMO use, and all that. But on the overall, the most significant situations, issues the studies identified was the issues of cultism. So cultism permeates through the entire 6 South states, and it's something that it's driving other kinds of criminality. And as you and I know, when youths are unemployed, they are prone to be easy tools to be used in such kind of ungodly endeavors. We also have environmental concerns of widespread environmental degradation arising from oil and gas exploration in most communities in Rivers State. Livelihoods have been impacted negatively, farms are being polluted, the waterways are being polluted, so community people can't fish, they can't farm, and that's the traditional livelihood practices of the Rivers people, so to speak. So in such kind of circumstances, their own survival needs are being denied. So there is so much discontent, in our local communities. So when we have a situation whereby there is discontent and massive youth unemployment, you see how these insecurity issues now comes up. So most of these youths now go out, get guns, and do all what they do.
Dr. Kiali Nyanyana of the University of Port Harcourt is the co-researcher on Rivers State for the NDD study sponsored by the European Union. He explains further that oil and politics have become the bane of insecurity in Rivers State, where elections have in recent times become the seasons where different forms of violence are at their peak in the state.
One of the major findings of our research in Rivers State is that we saw a proliferation of grassroots-based and cult group almost across the entire communities in the states. Cultism is dialectically linked to armed robbery, to kidnapping, to oil theft and artisanal production, to political violence, to community conflicts, to electoral malpractices. So, Rivers State is one of the states that has been identified as the hotbed of political violence, electoral violence, in almost all elections that we have seen, particularly from 2019 to date. We've got a new notion of federal might versus local might, where the federal authorities, those who control the federal authorities, want to make use of the security, the army, to do what? To rig election. And in course of that, there is a reaction from what we call the local might, and that intensified violence. The environmental cleanup in Ogoni has also generated, new resource conflicts over who should benefit from the process, what we call benefit sharing, and who should gain more within the context of elite, benefit capture. And we are talking about issues of employment that is generated by the cleanup, training opportunities that is generated by the cleanup. All of this has led to new dynamics, new actors of those who are struggling to benefit from the cleanup process.
The Rivers State government has over the last 20 years responded to the challenges of insecurity in the state, but the NDD research findings show that these have not been successful.
Rivers State as it is today, insecurity is still part of our challenges we face. People in coastal communities, can't travel to their communities, without having fears of being attacked by sea pirates, And also the issues around cultism, which has permeated throughout the states, from Ogoni to Abonima to Ahoda down to Port Harcourt. Cult groups and cult gangs have strongholds of our communities. In fact, they are in control of community space. They are influential when it comes to community-based politics and even toll collection at markets, at parks and all that. And this inter-gang rivalry over who owns what collection points and all that so brings about insecurity and conflict. The issue of oil bunkering too, artisanal refining and oil bunkering too, has also been implicated as one of the challenges we are having in Rivers State that drives insecurity. Monies gotten from crude oil sale are being also used to purchase weapons. We gather that from the findings too. So now today we talk about OSPAC, for example, which started in Onega, the Onega Security and Peace Advisory Council. So these were local community, initiatives to secure the area because the police have failed. The soldiers are nowhere to be found. The police are nowhere to be found, and people can't go to farms in their communities. They can't go and fish in their communities. So we now have these local, self-help approaches. OSPAC is now all over the state. It generally shows a failure of governance.
Unlike the situation in other Niger Delta states, the NDD research report on Rivers State appears to have identified that oil-producing communities have specific grievances against certain oil companies, and this remains a source of tension in places like Aminigboko, Ogoni, Umokilide, Umochidipelu, and Okbelide, among others.
The multinational companies also, they should stop giving out contracts to violent actors. Why give out contract to a well-known sea pirate or a well-known kidnapper who vandalizes your property and you ask the criminal to protect your property? It means you are also giving signal to other persons, to start their own pipeline vandalism and all that, to get their own share of the contract. And the multinational corporations should also ensure they implement all GMOU agreements, corporate social responsibility agreements with communities. That is what is also bringing about most of the discontent in communities.
The international oil companies are key actors, not only in terms of ensuring that their oil activities comply with international standards, but they are also to ensure that there is peace, otherwise their investment is threatened. One of the things that the international community can do is to put pressure on the federal government to ensure that they place the Niger Delta, for example, that is the engine house or that generates the revenue of the country, should be entitled some level of what? Social security. Some level of what? Benefit from the resources that flow from their area. So they have critical role to play to ensure security in the Niger Delta and Rivers State.
Indeed, there are several other recommendations in the research report to address the findings on insecurity, with specific actions to be taken by the federal and Rivers State governments. For non-state actors, the research report has also clearly identified roles and actions for the multinationals and indigenous oil companies, communities, and their leaders and civil society organizations. It is indeed a job for everyone, and everybody must be involved to bring about the deserved change of the narrative.
Welcome back. A number of drivers of insecurity in Rivers State are similar to what obtains in other states of the Niger Delta region. The researchers have, however, drawn attention to three distinct issues in Rivers State. These include the emerging trend of gang governance in motor parks and markets, and then the encroachment of traditional governance in communities by militant youths. The other very disturbing issue is the high tension in the oil-producing communities in border areas of Rivers State. This is evident, for instance, in the dispute over oil wells between Rivers and Bayelsa states. Ankyo, you're welcome to the program. Thank you for being with us.
Me.
Yes. How bad, really, is the security situation in Rivers State?
The issues of insecurity is a long-standing one, as the report has stated, and as we all know. The issues of gangs and the issues of cultism are also long-standing ones. They are also linked to politics and political activities and the injustice and the agitation of the long-term agitation of within the Niger Delta region. Now, for instance, when gangs or activities of gangs are highlighted, perhaps in places like motor parks, for instance, we shouldn't forget that activities like cultism and gangs always go for the weakest point. And where are those points? Those points now have been identified as motor parks. Now, who are the people that use motor parks? They are the poor people. They are the unemployed. They are the people that don't have vehicles. So the activities of gangs and cultists will be prominent and more obvious in places like that, because there is fear, there is anxiety. But all of these things will be related to the issues of unemployment, the issues of lack of education, the issue of failure of government. And in that, I mean failure of politicians.
We find out that government has done some things, short-term things, but they don't seem to have worked. Does it mean that there is no hope for us in Rivers State?
As far as I'm concerned, there is hope, but there is only hope when we do when the right things are done. The Rivers State is a very strategic state in the discourse of the Niger Delta region. When we go a little bit back to the time frame that this report had looked at, and even going further back to the time frame of the beginning of this dispensation of democracy, that is 1999 into 2000, that's a good 20 years now. Well, if you look at those times and you look at today, the issues are still the same, but the way of approaching the issues are different. The agitators 20 years ago are no longer the key agitators now. I mean, the agitators in those days are 20 years older. So if they were 40 or 35, they are now 20 years on top of that. So first of all, there are different players on ground now. The former players and former agitators, whether they were agitating armed agitators or whether they were intellectual agitators, and then you compare it to the armed agitators, the people that eventually accepted amnesty in 2009, and you look today, almost 11 years on from 2009 of the amnesty, definitely it wouldn't take a genius to know that there are different players today in the Niger Delta. There are different players today in Rivers State. The interactions are linked. The agitation and the gangs and the cultism and all of that, they are linked. So when you look at it from that angle, I believe, as a person who lives and works in Rivers State, as a Rivers daughter, as a Niger Delta daughter, the issues today are different in the sense that the reaction is different. The way that people see things is different today because we have access to information. We have faster technology than we did 20 years ago. 20 years ago, for the issues to be heard, CNN or BBC or AIT has to come down to the Niger Delta, go into the creeks safely and come out safely. But today it's not like that. Today you just use a telephone and you can stay wherever you are and send out whatever you want to send out, whether it is even true or not. So politics really, in my opinion, of 20 years experience, politicians have not really succeeded. And by this, I mean from the federal government coming down to the state government, to the local government level, there has been failure of what to do, failure of actually being able to do the right thing to sustain, if you like, the interaction that would have led to peace, that would have led to a situation where the amnesty would have succeeded. The amnesty, in my opinion, has not succeeded. It has only succeeded for the IOCs, for the federal government, and for the oil well owners.
Let's stay with politics. You've put your thumb really on the issues about politics and the political leaders and their complicity in some of the violent activities that are going on. And the research finding says that it's all in the mix. And that is what you have said. So what do we do?
In my opinion, and as someone who believes in free and fair elections, if we look at the different type of politics in Nigeria, people don't die the way that people die in the South. People don't die the way that they die in the Niger Delta. I would prefer a situation where the politicians first of all recognize that they are servants of the people. I don't mean that they come to our house and sweep our house and cook for us. No, but they are servants in service delivery. And if you offer yourself up to the electorate and you say, I will do this and I will do that, it doesn't have to result in killing. It doesn't have to result in a politician trying to buy the vote of an electorate. You make promises and you keep those promises. And so then we have a binding. We have something that holds us together. You serve and I choose to vote for you because you will do a good job. So that's one aspect of it. Politicians really need to know that it is service delivery, that it is not about their ego. It is not about what they use our money to do. Our money does not belong to them. We've given it to them in trust for them to do these things that we lack. What are those things? We don't have infrastructure. We don't have a quality education anymore. We don't have healthcare. There is no jobs. There is no housing. And so when these things are there, there is no electricity. So when these things are missing in the system year in, year out, tenure in, tenure out, politicians have failed. So first of all, they must hold themselves responsible. We must hold them responsible and be able to make sure that they deliver.
You are an environmentalist. How does it all factor into the insecurity that is happening? What do we do about the environmental degradation?
That was what led to Ken Sarawiwa's death. That was what led to the Joy Youth Council rising up, and so many other uprising, albeit not most of it non-violent at the time. The IOCs are very responsible for where we are today. The IOCs, like for instance, if you look at the pipelines that were laid in the 50s, in 58, those pipelines are still in our waters. They're still in our creeks. And those pipelines are made of metal. Today you have plastic pipelines. The IOCs are highly responsible for the devastation that started off all these crises, because the oil devastation of our waters, our drinking water, our farm, our fishing took away our rights to feed ourselves, and hence took away our right to riches, if you like, and impoverished our people, and impoverished the communities that were actually producing the wealth. And when we started resisting it, the Nigerian government came down massively with the collaboration of the IOCs on the people. And so the resistance started. The IOCs cannot decide that a spill is caused by the community and decide how much that spill is worth to both itself and the community. And so this is failure of government as well. We need to own and control our resources. We need to own it and control it. And second of all, we need to make them not to look. There has to be a moratorium. We're not benefiting. So what is wrong with a moratorium on exploring for oil and gas until we actually get our lives, our environment, our future sorted out?
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Indeed, so much to talk about from one of the oldest states in the oil-rich Niger Delta region. The dialogue will, however, have to move to another state in our next edition of the program. Join us then as we continue to seek evidence-based solutions to the security challenges confronting the 6 core Niger Delta states of Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Cross River, Delta, Edo, and Rivers. I am Stella Dogu. Bye for now.